Dawn crawls over Jerusalem like a wounded animal, slow, hesitant, as if even the sun is afraid to rise. The streets are empty, the gates are barred, and in a dark chamber high in the palace, King Hezekiah's hand trembles as he holds a letter torn at the edges, the ink still wet with threat. Behind him, the shadow of the prophet Isaiah falls across the stone floor like a question no one dares to ask aloud. What do you do when the most powerful army on earth surrounds your city and mocks your God? When the enemy's voice is louder than heaven's silence? When faith is all you have left and it feels like nothing? This is the story of the night God wrote history with the breath of angels. A night when 185,000 soldiers laid down to sleep and never woke. A night when one desperate prayer became the hinge on which empires turned. This is the story of Sennacherib, the man who thought he could silence God. If this story moves you, subscribe and turn on the bell, because what happens next will redefine what you thought was possible. The throne room is crowded but silent. Advisors line the walls like statues, their faces carved with worry. The air is thick, heavy with the kind of silence that comes before catastrophe. Then the doors burst open. A messenger stumbles in, his tunic torn, his sandals caked with mud and blood. He's been running for days. You can see it in his eyes, the horror of what he's seen, the urgency of what he must say. He falls to one knee before Hezekiah and extends a scroll sealed with Assyrian wax, blood red, stamped with the fist of empire. The king takes it slowly, as if the parchment itself might burn his hands. He breaks the seal. The wax crumbles like dried bone. His eyes scan the contents, and with each line, the color drains from his face. It's a list, city after city. Lachish, fallen, Libnah, ashes, Ekron, silent, 34 cities in total, each one a name that once meant home, harvest, children playing in the streets, all of them gone. All of them crushed beneath the iron heel of Sennacherib, king of Assyria, the man who has never lost a battle, never shown mercy, never left a single stone standing when he decides a place should cease to exist. And at the bottom of the scroll, written in boldy, deliberate strokes, one word, Jerusalem. Hezekiah looks up. His advisors stare back at him, frozen. No one breathes, no one moves. Finally, one of the older counselors, a man who has served 3 kings and survived 2 wars, clears his throat and whispers, "My lord, Sennacherib has never lost." The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Hezekiah rises slowly from his throne. He doesn't speak. He simply folds the letter, presses it against his chest, and walks out of the room. His footsteps echo down the marble corridor, steady, deliberate, but inside, his heart is a war drum pounding against his ribs. He walks alone to the temple as dusk settles over the city. The streets are quiet now, but it's not the peaceful quiet of evening. It's the quiet of a city holding its breath, waiting for the blow that everyone knows is coming. Hezekiah enters the temple, and the heavy doors close behind him with a sound like the sealing of a tomb. Inside, the air is cool and still. Lamplight flickers across the walls, casting long shadows that dance like ghosts. Hezekiah walks to the altar, his footsteps the only sound in the vast, holy space. He stops, stands there for a long moment, the letter still clutched in his hand. Then slowly, deliberately, he spreads it out before the altar, not as an offering, but as an accusation, a silent question hurled at heaven. Is this what faithfulness gets me? Is this the reward for tearing down the idols, for calling my people back to you? Destruction, exile, the mockery of a pagan king. He doesn't pray aloud, he just breathes, long, ragged breaths that sound like a man drowning on dry land. He stares at the torn parchment, at the names of the fallen cities, at the word Jerusalem written in ink that looks too much like blood. And he waits for a word that doesn't come, waits for a sign that heaven is still listening. Outside, the watchmen pace the walls, their eyes scanning the horizon. Nothing yet, but in the distance, smoke rises, black columns against the dying light, the smoke of cities that thought they were safe, the smoke of places that believed their walls were high enough, their gods strong enough, the smoke of the conquered. One of the watchmen mutters a prayer under his breath. Another spits over the edge of the wall, a gesture of defiance or despair. It's hard to tell which. They all know what's coming. They've heard the stories. Entire populations impaled on stakes, children thrown from city walls, women taken as slaves, men skinned alive and their hides nailed to the gates as a warning to the next city in line. That's who Sennacherib is. That's what Assyria does. And now it's their turn. Back in the throne room, the advisors have not moved. They stand in their places, waiting for the king to return, waiting for orders, waiting for someone to tell them what impossible thing they're supposed to do next. But Hezekiah does not return. Not yet. He stays in the temple, kneeling now, his forehead pressed against the cold stone floor, his hands open and empty before the altar. Hours pass. The lamps burn lower. The shadows grow longer. And still, no word from heaven. Then at midnight, the doors of the palace burst open again. Another messenger, but this one is different. He's not from Judah, he's from Lachish. Or rather, from what's left of it. His clothes are scorched. His face is streaked with ash and tears. His eyes are hollow. The eyes of a man who has seen the end of the world and somehow lived to tell about it. The guards try to stop him, but he pushes past them, stumbling into the throne room where the advisors still wait. He collapses to his knees, gasping for breath, and when he finally speaks, his voice is barely a whisper, but every man in the room hears it as clearly as if he'd shouted, "They're not coming to conquer," he says, "they're coming to erase." The silence that follows is absolute. No one asks what he means. They don't need to. They've all heard the reports. They know what Assyria leaves behind. Nothing, not ruins, not rubble. Nothing. As if the city never existed at all. As if the people who lived there, loved there, raised their children there, were never born. One of the advisors, a young man, barely 30, turns and vomits in the corner. No one reprimands him. Another sinks into a chair, his face in his hands. A third stares at the ceiling as if searching for an answer written in the stone. And then Hezekiah returns. He walks into the room slowly, his face unreadable. The letter is no longer in his hand. He's left it on the altar, whether as a prayer or a challenge. Even he doesn't know. He moves to his throne and sits. His hands grip the armrests, carved wood, smooth from the touch of generations of kings. He grips them so tightly that the wood cracks, a thin, sharp sound in the suffocating silence. He looks at the messenger from Lachish, looks at his advisors, looks at the empty space where hope used to stand, and then he speaks. Just 6 words, quiet, steady, terrifying in their certainty. Then we will make them remember us. The palace courtyard at dawn. The light is pale and cold. The kind of light that reveals everything and flatters nothing. Hezekiah has called his generals, 8 men who have fought in border skirmishes, who have defended villages from raiders, who have trained farmers to hold spears and shepherds to stand in formation. But none of them have ever faced anything like this. None of them have ever stared down the Assyrian war machine. They stand in a circle, their voices low and urgent, their hands gesturing sharply as they argue. One of them, Joah, the recorder, a man whose job is to document history, not make it, speaks first. His voice is measured, diplomatic, the voice of a man trying to be reasonable in an unreasonable situation. My lord, we should negotiate, pay tribute, buy time. Sennacherib is not unreasonable. He wants gold, silver, submission. We give him that, and perhaps he moves on. Perhaps he leaves us intact. Another general, Eliakim, older, scarred from a dozen battles, shakes his head sharply. Sennacherib doesn't negotiate. He humiliates. You give him tribute and he takes it. Then he takes your city anyway. Then he takes your sons and makes them watch while he burns everything you love. Tribute is just the entry fee to your own destruction. A third man, Shebna, the palace administrator, steps forward. He's younger than the others, ambitious, pragmatic. Then what do you propose? We fight. With what army? Assyria has 185,000 soldiers, trained, equipped, experienced. We have 10,000 men, farmers with spears, merchants with swords they've never swung in anger. This isn't a battle. It's a massacre waiting to happen. He pauses, lets the words sink in, then delivers the blow he's been building toward. We surrender before the siege begins. We open the gates. We spare the people. At least that way, some of us survive. The courtyard goes silent. No one wants to say it, but everyone is thinking it. Maybe he's right. Maybe survival is the only victory left. Hezekiah has been standing at the edge of the circle, listening, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Now he steps forward. The generals fall silent. He looks at each of them in turn, these men who have served him faithfully, who have every right to be terrified, who are only saying aloud what half the city is whispering in the dark. We do not bend, Hezekiah says. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the morning air like a blade. The generals stare at him. Shebna's mouth opens as if to protest, but no sound comes out. Joah blinks, uncertain. Eliakim nods slowly, though his face betrays his doubt. And then one of them, a younger general, a man named Azariah, who has always been too honest for his own good, laughs. It's a bitter, disbelieving sound, sharp and jagged. With what army, my lord? He says, echoing Shebna's words. With what strength? Assyria has conquered empires. We're one city. One small city with high walls and empty granaries and a king who thinks faith is a strategy. He doesn't say it cruelly. He says it desperately, as if hoping Hezekiah will hear the impossibility of it and change his mind. Hezekiah looks at him. Faith isn't the strategy, he says quietly. God is. Azariah opens his mouth to respond, then closes it. What do you say to that? How do you argue with a king who has just bet the lives of everyone in the city on an invisible hand? The meeting dissolves. The generals leave, some shaking their heads, others silent and pale. Hezekiah watches them go, and for just a moment his shoulders sag. He's not a warrior king, he's not a strategist. He's a man who tore down idols and tried to call his people back to a God most of them have forgotten. And now that God is the only card he has left to play, he turns and walks back into the palace, through the corridors, past servants who avert their eyes, past guards who stand a little straighter when he passes, but whose hands tremble on their spears. He walks until he reaches the temple again. It's become his refuge now, the only place where the noise of the world fades and the silence feels like presence instead of absence. Inside, Isaiah is waiting. The prophet stands near the altar, his back to the door, his hands clasped behind him. He doesn't turn when Hezekiah enters. He simply stands there, still as stone, as if he's been waiting for hours, or as if he knew, somehow, that the king would come. Hezekiah stops a few paces behind him. For a long time, neither man speaks. The lamplight flickers. Somewhere in the distance, a door slams. The sounds of the city, muted, muffled, filter through the thick temple walls. Finally, Hezekiah kneels. He doesn't kneel before the altar. He kneels on the floor, right there in the middle of the room, his head bowed, his hands open on his thighs. He presses his forehead to the cold stone and stays there. Minutes pass. The silence stretches, and then so quietly that it's almost a whisper, he speaks. I don't know what I'm doing. Isaiah turns then. He looks down at the king, this man who holds the fate of a city in his hands, who has just staked everything on a promise he can't prove, who is one bad decision away from being remembered as the fool who let Jerusalem burn. The prophet's voice, When it comes, is low and steady, not comforting, not soft, but solid, like bedrock. The Lord says, "Do not fear the words you have heard. Do not fear the servants of the king of Assyria, who have spoken against me. I will put a spirit in him, and he will hear a rumor and return to his own land. And in his own land I will cause him to fall by the sword." Hezekiah looks up. His eyes are red-rimmed, his face gaunt. "How?" he asks. Not challenging, just asking, needing to know, needing something to hold on to. Isaiah doesn't answer. He simply places his hand on Hezekiah's shoulder, a brief, firm touch, and then turns and leaves. His footsteps echo down the hall, fading into silence. Hezekiah stays there on his knees, the words echo in his mind. "I will put a spirit in him." Not an army, not a strategy, a spirit, something unseen, something impossible to plan for, to prepare for, to trust in. He rises slowly, his joints stiff, his body aching. He walks to the temple doors and pushes them open. The sunlight is brighter now, harsher. He squints against it, shielding his eyes, and walks toward the city wall. The climb is steep. Stone steps, worn smooth by generations of watchmen, wind up to the top of the wall where the wind is always blowing, where you can see for miles in every direction. Hezekiah reaches the top and stops. He grips the stone parapet, feeling the rough texture beneath his palms, and looks out. And there, in the valley below, he sees them. Tents, thousands of them, spreading across the hills like a plague, like locusts, like the shadow of death itself. The Assyrian camp. Fires burning even in daylight, sending up columns of smoke. Soldiers moving between the tents, small from this distance, but numerous, so numerous. And in the center, rising above everything else, a banner, black fabric, enormous, snapping in the wind. And on it, embroidered in crimson thread, a single image, a fist, closed, crushing. A soldier stands beside Hezekiah on the wall. Young, barely old enough to grow a beard, he's staring at the camp below, his face pale, his hands gripping his spear so tightly his knuckles are white. He doesn't look at the king, he just stares at the tents, at the fires, at the banner. And then, so quietly it's almost lost in the wind, he whispers, "They'll be at the gates by morning." Hezekiah doesn't look at him. He keeps his eyes on the valley, on the army that has come to erase his city from the face of the earth. And then, just as quietly, he whispers back, "Then morning will be interesting." The soldier glances at him, startled, unsure if the king is joking or mad or something else entirely. But Hezekiah doesn't explain. He just stands there, his hands on the stone, his eyes on the enemy, his heart pounding a rhythm that sounds like a prayer he doesn't have words for yet. Below, in the valley, the Assyrian drums begin to beat. Slow, steady, relentless. The sound of an empire that has never been stopped. The sound of a machine that grinds cities into dust and moves on without looking back. The sound of tomorrow. Hezekiah descends from the wall as the sun climbs higher, harsh and unforgiving. The city below is alive with a different kind of energy now. Not panic, not yet, but something close. A humming tension, like a string pulled too tight, waiting to snap. He moves through the streets, and people stop to watch him pass. They don't call out, they don't ask questions, they just watch. Their eyes following him, like he's carrying the answer to a question they're too afraid to ask aloud. He reaches the lower district where the springs are, Gihon, the source of the city's water, flowing just outside the walls. It's been Jerusalem's lifeline for generations, the reason the city can survive a siege at all. But it's also a vulnerability. If the Assyrians control the springs, they control the city. They can sit outside the gates and simply wait for thirst to do what their battering rams cannot. Hezekiah has already made the decision. Now he has to execute it. He gathers the engineers, the laborers, the men who know stone and water and the hidden veins of the earth. He gives the order, and they stare at him as if he's lost his mind. Seal the springs, block every channel outside the walls, cut off the water supply, not from the city but from the enemy. Redirect everything through the tunnels, bring it inside, make the Assyrians dig in the dry earth while Jerusalem drinks from hidden reserves. It's brilliant. It's also brutal, because the work has to be done now, immediately, and there aren't enough hands. So Hezekiah conscripts everyone, men, women, anyone strong enough to carry stone or dig earth. The elderly are pulled from their homes. Mothers leave their children with neighbors. Merchants abandon their shops, and they work. Through the heat of the day, through the cold of the night, they haul stones the size of sheep. They dig until their hands bleed. They fill channels with rubble and clay and anything that will hold back the water. It takes 3 days. 3 days of backbreaking, soul-crushing labor, and the cost is visible. An old man collapses in the midday sun, his heart giving out, and his son keeps working because there's no time to mourn. A young woman, pregnant, stumbles and falls, and her husband carries her home. But he returns an hour later, his face hollow, and picks up his shovel again. Children cry themselves to sleep at night because their parents are too exhausted to comfort them. On the 4th day, as Hezekiah walks through the lower district inspecting the work, a woman steps into his path. She's thin, worn, her hair gray and tangled. She doesn't bow. She doesn't lower her eyes. She just stands there, blocking his way. And when he stops, she spits at his feet. The glob of saliva lands on the dusty stone between them. Her voice, when she speaks, is hoarse from exhaustion and rage. "You've killed us to save your pride." The soldiers move to grab her, but Hezekiah raises a hand, stopping them. He looks at the woman, really looks at her, sees the exhaustion in her eyes, the fear, the fury, sees himself reflected there, and wonders if she's right. He doesn't respond. He can't. What would he say? That he's doing this for God, that he's following a promise whispered in the dark by a prophet, that he's betting all their lives on something he can't see or touch or prove. He just keeps walking. That night, Hezekiah goes to the royal archives. It's a room he's visited only a handful of times, a place of dust and shadows and ancient scrolls stacked in cubbies carved into the walls. A scribe waits for him there, an old man named Hilkiah, who has spent his entire life among these texts, who knows the history of Judah the way a shepherd knows his flock. Hezekiah tells him what he's looking for, and Hilkiah nods slowly, thoughtfully, then disappears into the maze of shelves. He returns with a scroll so old the edges crumble at his touch. He unrolls it carefully on the table, and in the lamplight, faded ink becomes visible. Words written generations ago, during the reign of David. Hezekiah leans close and reads. The text is a record of God's covenant with David, a promise spoken through the prophet Nathan. And there, buried in the middle of the passage, one line catches his eye and holds it. The Lord will defend this city for his own sake, and for the sake of his servant David. Hezekiah reads it again, then a 3rd time. He traces the words with his finger, feeling the texture of the ancient parchment beneath his touch. His lips move, repeating the phrase silently, as if saying it enough times will make it true, will anchor it in reality, will turn a line of ink into a shield of iron. Hilkiah watches him, saying nothing. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the shutters, and in the distance, faint but unmistakable, the sound of Assyrian war drums begins again, steady, relentless, a heartbeat that never stops. Hezekiah rolls up the scroll carefully and hands it back to the scribe. Keep this where I can find it," he says quietly. Hilkiah nods. "My lord, do you believe it? The promise?" Hezekiah doesn't answer immediately. He stands there in the dim light, his face half in shadow, and when he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. "I have to." He leaves the archives and walks through the palace halls It's late now, past midnight, and the corridors are empty except for the guards who stand at their posts, silent as statues. He reaches the inner chamber, his private quarters, and finds his family waiting. His wife, Hephzibah, sits on a low couch near the window, her hands folded in her lap. She's been crying. He can see it in the redness around her eyes, the way she holds herself too still, as if movement might shatter whatever fragile composure she's managed to gather. Beside her, their son, Manasseh, sits cross-legged on the floor. He's 7 years old, small for his age, with dark eyes that are too serious, too aware. Hezekiah closes the door behind him, and the sound echoes in the small room. Manasseh looks up, and for a moment they just stare at each other. Father and son, king and heir, two people trying to figure out how to survive the end of the world. Manasseh's voice, when he speaks, is quiet but steady. Father, are we going to die?" Hephzibah inhales sharply, as if the question is a blade, but she doesn't silence the boy. She just looks at Hezekiah, waiting for his answer, because she wants to know too. Hezekiah crosses the room and kneels in front of his son. He takes the boy's small hands in his own, rough, calloused hands that have spent the last days hauling stone and signing orders and gripping the hilt of a sword he barely knows how to use. He looks into Manasseh's eyes, and for a moment he sees not his son but every child in Jerusalem, every innocent life he's responsible for, every future he's gambling with. "We are going to see who God is," he says. It's not the answer Manasseh was expecting. The boy frowns, confused. What does that mean? Hezekiah squeezes his son's hands gently. "Oh, it means that sometimes you have to go to the edge of everything you know, to the place where you can't save yourself, where you can't fix it, where you can't do anything, and that's where you find out if what you believe is real." Manasseh is quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then, softly, "Are you scared?" Hezekiah doesn't hesitate. "Yes, but you're the king. Kings get scared too." Manasseh nods slowly, as if this makes sense to him, as if knowing his father is afraid somehow makes the fear a little more bearable. Hezekiah pulls the boy close, wraps his arms around him, and holds him there. Hephzibah moves closer, and Hezekiah reaches for her hand. They sit there together, the three of them, in the lamplight, in the silence, in the last hours of the world as they know it. But even as he holds them, even as he tries to project strength and certainty, Hezekiah's hand, the one resting on Manasseh's shoulder, trembles, just a little, just enough. Outside, the drums beat on, closer now, louder, the sound of an army that doesn't sleep, doesn't doubt, doesn't fear, the sound of iron and fire and the end of all things small and fragile and human. And somewhere in the valley below, in the sprawling Assyrian camp, King Sennacherib sits in his tent, surrounded by maps and generals and the spoils of 34 conquered cities, and he smiles. Because tomorrow he will add one more name to the list. Tomorrow he will erase Jerusalem. The sun rises on the 5th day, and with it comes the sound Jerusalem has been dreading. Not the drums this time, something worse. Hoofbeats, a single rider, approaching the city gate at a slow, deliberate pace. No hurry, no aggression, just the calm, measured approach of someone who knows he holds all the power and wants everyone to see it. The watchmen on the walls sound the alarm, and within minutes, Hezekiah is there, flanked by his officials, Eliakim, Shebna, Joah. They stand at the top of the wall, looking down at the rider who has stopped just beyond arrow range. He's dressed in the colors of Assyria, deep purple and crimson, armor polished to a mirror shine. His horse is white, enormous, its breath steaming in the cool morning air. The rider doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. His voice carries effortlessly, trained and deliberate, a voice accustomed to addressing crowds, to proclaiming the will of empires. And when he speaks not in Aramaic, the language of diplomacy, but in Hebrew, perfect, fluent Hebrew, so that every person on the wall, every citizen within earshot, can understand every single word. Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. His voice echoes off the stone. People gather along the wall now. Soldiers, yes, but also citizens who have climbed up to see, to hear, to witness whatever is about to happen. They stand in clusters, silent, straining to listen. The rider continues. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you. He cannot deliver you from my hand. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. He pauses, lets the words sink in. Then, with the timing of a practiced orator, he drives the knife deeper. Do not listen to Hezekiah. For thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me, and come out to me. Then each of you will eat from his own vine and his own fig tree, and drink water from his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. It sounds almost generous, almost kind. A land of grain and wine, your own vine, your own fig tree. He's offering them survival. Slavery, yes, but survival. And after 5 days of sealing springs and hauling stones and watching the Assyrian camp grow larger every hour, survival sounds like a mercy. The people on the wall murmur. Some are nodding, others look at each other, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Hezekiah can feel it, the erosion of hope, the creeping doubt, the whisper that maybe, just maybe, the rider is right. Shebna leans close to Hezekiah, his voice urgent. My lord, tell him to speak in Aramaic. The people don't need to hear this. It's undermining everything. But the rider isn't finished. He raises his voice, and the murmuring stops. Every eye is on him now. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered their lands out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? He pauses, and in the silence the question hangs like a noose. Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? It's not just a threat, it's a sermon, a carefully constructed argument designed to dismantle faith, to replace it with fear, to make the people question everything they've been told. And it's working. Hezekiah can see it in their faces, the doubt, the calculation, the desperate arithmetic of survival. Eliakim steps forward, his voice strained. Please, speak in Aramaic. The people on the wall. The rider cuts him off with a sharp laugh. Has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall, who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine? The words are crude, deliberate, designed to humiliate, designed to paint a picture so vivid, so visceral, that no one can ignore it. This is what's coming. Starvation, dehydration, the slow, agonizing death of a city under siege. And the rider wants them to see it, to smell it, to taste it before it even begins. Then he raises his voice even louder, addressing not just the officials but every person within earshot. Do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord. The Lord will not deliver you. And then the final blow. Make your peace with me. Come out, surrender. And live, he turns his horse and rides back toward the Assyrian camp, slow and unhurried, his message delivered. The silence he leaves behind is suffocating. People stare at each other. Some weep, others clench their fists, whether in anger or despair. It's impossible to tell. A woman near the gate sinks to her knees, her hands over her face, her shoulders shaking. Hezekiah stands frozen. Every word the rider spoke feels like a hammer blow, not to the walls, but to something deeper, to the fragile, desperate faith he's been trying to hold together. He looks at his officials. They won't meet his eyes. He turns and descends the wall without a word. His officials follow, but at a distance, as if proximity to the king might somehow make them complicit in whatever disaster is coming. The people part as he passes, their faces accusing or pleading or simply blank with shock. Hezekiah reaches his chamber and closes the door. For a moment, he just stands there, his back against the wood, his chest heaving. Then, with a sudden, violent motion, he grabs the collar of his robe and tears it. The fabric rips with a sound like a scream, and he tears it again and again until the fine linen hangs in shreds around him. He doesn't stop there. He goes to his wardrobe and pulls out sackcloth, rough, coarse, the fabric of mourning and repentance. He strips off the torn robe and wraps the sackcloth around himself, the fibers scratching against his skin, a physical reminder of how far everything has fallen. Then he turns and walks back out, not toward the throne room, but toward the temple. He moves through the palace halls like a ghost, the sackcloth dragging behind him, his face ashen. Servants press themselves against the walls as he passes. Guards look away. He reaches the temple and enters. This time, he doesn't kneel. He collapses, falls forward onto the stone floor, face down, arms spread wide. The sackcloth pools around him. His breath comes in ragged gasps, and for a long time, he doesn't move, doesn't speak. He just lies there, prostrate before the altar, a king brought to nothing. The silence is absolute, not peaceful, not comforting, just empty, as if even God has turned his face away. Then footsteps, Isaiah enters, his movements slow and deliberate. He doesn't speak immediately. He simply stands near the altar, waiting. Minutes pass, maybe more. Time loses meaning in the thick, heavy silence. Finally, Hezekiah lifts his head. His voice, when it comes, is raw. "Did you hear him? Did you hear what he said?" Isaiah nods once. He mocked God. He mocked everything. Hezekiah pushes himself up to his knees, his hands trembling. "Send the people. They heard him too. They're wondering if he's right. If all of this has been a lie. If I've led them to their deaths for nothing." Isaiah's face is unreadable. He reaches into his robe and pulls out a piece of parchment, clean, blank. He places it on the altar, then hands Hezekiah a quill and ink. "Write what you heard," Isaiah says quietly. Hezekiah stares at him. What? Write it. Every word the Rabshakeh spoke, every accusation, every threat, write it down." Hezekiah doesn't understand, but he obeys. His hand shakes as he dips the quill in ink and begins to write. The words pour out, the mockery, the threats, the questions designed to erode faith. Where are the gods of Hamath? Where are the gods of Arpad? Who among all the gods has delivered their land? He writes it all, and with each line the weight of it presses down on him harder. When he's finished, the parchment is covered in ink, and his hand is cramping. He sets down the quill and looks at Isaiah, waiting for an explanation. Isaiah takes the parchment and spreads it out on the altar. Then he steps back. "Leave it there," he says. Hezekiah frowns. "Why?" "Because it's not your burden to carry. It's his." And then, as if in response to the unspoken question, a tear falls from Hezekiah's face and lands on the parchment. The ink smudges, the words blurring together, becoming illegible. He stares at it, this ruined page, this record of mockery and threat, and something inside him shifts. Isaiah's voice is quiet but edged with steel. "The Rabshakeh thinks he's speaking to you, but he's not. He's speaking against the Holy One of Israel, and the Holy One has heard every word." Hezekiah looks up, and Isaiah's eyes are hard, bright, fierce. The virgin daughter of Zion despises him. The daughter of Jerusalem shakes her head at him. Whom has he mocked? Whom has he scorned? Against whom has he raised his voice and lifted his eyes in pride? Against the Holy One of Israel. The words land like a declaration of war, not from Hezekiah, from God. Hezekiah feels something flicker in his chest. Not hope, not yet, but something close. A spark, a refusal. He stands slowly, the sackcloth falling away, and looks at the smudged parchment on the altar. "What does that mean?" he asks, his voice steadier now. "What happens when God is offended?" Isaiah doesn't smile, but there's something in his eyes, something like anticipation. "It means the Rabshakeh chose the wrong enemy." He turns and walks out, his footsteps echoing in the empty temple. Hezekiah stands alone before the altar, staring at the ruined parchment, at the words that have been swallowed by ink and tears and something he can't quite name. Outside, the Assyrian drums beat on. But inside, in the silence of the temple, something else is beating too. Something quiet, something patient, something that sounds, if you listen closely enough, like the slow, steady inhale before a storm. The city wakes to the sound of a ram's horn, long, mournful, echoing off the stone walls. It's the signal for assembly, the call that brings every citizen to the temple square, whether they want to come or not. By mid-morning, the square is packed. Nobles stand near the front, their fine robes dusty from the chaos of the past week. Behind them, merchants, laborers, mothers holding children, elderly leaning on walking sticks, the entire population of Jerusalem gathered in one place, waiting. Hezekiah stands on the temple steps, elevated above the crowd. He's no longer wearing sackcloth. He's dressed in royal garments, purple and blue, the colors of kingship. But his face tells a different story. He looks older than he did a week ago, thinner, haunted. But there's something else there too, something in his eyes that wasn't there before, a hardness, a resolve. He raises his hand and the murmuring stops. The silence is immediate, total. 10,000 people holding their breath, waiting to hear what their king will say, what impossible thing he will ask of them now. Hezekiah's voice, when he speaks, is hoarse but clear. It carries across the square, reaching even those standing at the edges, pressed against the walls. "I will not open the gates." The words land like stones in still water. Ripples of shock spread through the crowd. People glance at each other, uncertain if they heard correctly. "I will not send tribute. I will not negotiate. I will not bow to a man who stands at our gates and mocks the living God." Now the murmuring begins, low, urgent, rising. A voice from the middle of the crowd cuts through, loud and raw. "You've sentenced us to death." Hezekiah doesn't flinch. He looks toward the voice, though he can't see the speaker's face. "Perhaps," he says, "but if we die free. We die standing. We die as people who refuse to bow to a king who thinks he's a god." Another voice, this one from closer to the front, an older man, his face lined with years and worry. "My children will starve, my grandchildren. What am I supposed to tell them when the food runs out and the water dries up and the Assyrians are still out there, waiting?" Hezekiah steps down from the temple steps, moving closer to the crowd. The guards tense, but he waves them back. He walks to the edge of the platform, so close now that the people in the front can see the exhaustion in his face, the shadows under his eyes, the way his hands grip the stone railing. "And tell them," he says quietly, "that you chose faith over fear. Tell them that when the most powerful empire on earth came to our gates and demanded we deny our God, we said no. Tell them that we stood, not because we were strong, but because we trusted in something stronger than bronze and iron and the armies of men." A woman near the front, younger, her voice breaking. "And if that's not enough, if God doesn't come, if we starve anyway?" Hezekiah looks at her, really looks at her, Sees the fear there, the desperation, the plea for him to say something, anything that will make this bearable. Then we will starve, he says, but we will starve free. We will not trade our children for bread and our dignity for water. We will not bow. The silence that follows is heavy, suffocating. Then, slowly, someone near the back begins to clap. It's a single pair of hands, tentative, uncertain. But then another joins, and another. Not everyone, not even half, but enough. Enough that the sound grows, spreading through the crowd like a wave, until the square is filled with the sound of hands striking together, a rhythm that sounds almost like defiance. But not everyone is clapping. Some stand with their arms crossed, their faces hard, others weep openly. A man near the front, a merchant by the look of his clothes, shakes his head and turns to leave, pushing through the crowd. Others follow him. Not many, but enough to notice. Enough to leave a gap in the assembly, a visible fracture. Hezekiah watches them go, doesn't call them back, doesn't condemn them. He just watches, and something in his chest tightens because he knows that he's asking the impossible, that he's betting lives on a promise he can't prove, on a God who hasn't spoken in days, on a hope that feels more like madness with every passing hour. The crowd disperses slowly, reluctantly, drifting back to their homes, their shops, their walls. Some walk with their heads high, shoulders back, as if Hezekiah's words have given them something to hold on to. Others shuffle, defeated, already mourning what they believe is coming. Hezekiah remains on the temple steps, watching them go. When the square is finally empty, he turns and walks back inside, alone. That night, he paces his chamber like a caged animal. Back and forth, his footsteps wearing a path in the stone floor. Hephzibah sits in the corner, watching him, saying nothing. She knows there's nothing to say, no comfort that will reach him, no words that will ease the weight pressing down on his shoulders. Finally, he stops, stands in the center of the room, his hands hanging at his sides, his head bowed, and he whispers so quietly that Hephzibah has to strain to hear. I've bet everything on a promise. What if I heard wrong? What if this is pride, not faith? What if I'm leading them all to their deaths because I was too stubborn, too arrogant, to admit that sometimes surrender is the only way to survive? Hephzibah rises and crosses to him. She doesn't touch him. She just stands close, her presence a tether, a reminder that he's not alone in this, even if it feels like he is. Do you believe the promise? She asks softly. He looks at her, his eyes hollow. I don't know, I want to. I need to. But belief and certainty aren't the same thing. And right now, all I have is belief. And it feels like nothing. She takes his hand. Then maybe that's enough. He wants to believe her, wants to believe that fragile, trembling faith is sufficient when facing an empire. But all he can think about is the faces in the crowd. The woman who asked what to tell her children, the man who walked away, the elderly who collapsed from exhaustion sealing the springs, all of them trusting him, all of them looking to him for deliverance he can't guarantee. A knock at the door. Hezekiah pulls his hand from Hephzibah's and straightens. Enter. A servant steps inside, his face pale, his hands trembling. My lord, another letter. From Sennacherib. Hezekiah closes his eyes for a moment, bracing himself. Then he nods. Bring it. The servant hands him the scroll and retreats quickly, as if proximity to the message might somehow bring the plague upon him. Hezekiah breaks the seal, Assyrian wax, blood red, the same as before, and unrolls the parchment. This letter is shorter than the first, more direct, every word a blade. Now thus you shall speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah. Do not let your God, in whom you trust, deceive you by promising that Jerusalem will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all lands, devoting them to destruction. And shall you be delivered? Have the gods of the nations delivered them? I have destroyed them all, and now I will destroy you. Tomorrow we begin." Hezekiah reads it once, twice. The words blur together. Do not let your God deceive you. It's the same message the Rabshakeh delivered, but now it's written, sealed, official, a final warning before the hammer falls. He looks at the servant, who is still hovering near the door. "How many hours until dawn?" the servant swallows. "4, my lord." 4 hours. 4 hours until 185,000 Assyrian soldiers begin the assault. 4 hours until the siege engines roll forward, until the battering rams strike the gates, until arrows fall like rain, and the walls that have stood for generations are tested in ways they've never been tested before. 4 hours. Hezekiah dismisses the servant with a wave of his hand. The door closes, and he's alone with Hephzibah again. She's watching him, waiting for him to speak, to rage, to break, to do something. But he doesn't. He just stands there, holding the letter, staring at it as if he can will the words to change. Finally, he looks up. "What do you do?" he asks quietly. "With the longest 4 hours of your life?" Hephzibah doesn't answer. There is no answer. They both know it. Hezekiah sets the letter down on the table, carefully, as if it might shatter. Then he turns and walks to the window. Outside, the city is dark. A few torches burn on the walls, small points of light against the vast blackness, and beyond the walls, in the valley below, the Assyrian camp blazes, a second city made of fire, sprawling and insatiable. He watches the fires burn, watches the shadows move between the tents, listens to the distant sound of soldiers preparing, sharpening blades, tightening straps, readying themselves for the kill. And somewhere deep in his chest, beneath the fear and the doubt and the crushing weight of responsibility, a small voice whispers, "This is the moment. This is where faith is proven or destroyed. This is where you find out if the God you've been trusting is real, or if you've been talking to the silence all along." Hezekiah closes his eyes, presses his forehead against the cool stone of the window frame, and prays, not with words, but with the ache in his bones, the exhaustion in his soul, the desperate, wordless cry of a man who has run out of strategies and strength and certainty, and has nothing left but a fraying thread of hope. 4 hours until dawn. 4 hours until the world ends, or is reborn. 4 hours to find out if God is listening. The sun rises, and with it comes the sound Hezekiah has been dreading. Not a single sound, but a symphony of destruction, the grinding of wheels on stone, the crack of wood, the shouting of 10,000 voices moving in unison. The Assyrian army advances, and it's like watching a mountain slide toward you, inevitable and unstoppable. On the walls, Judah's soldiers stand in formation, their spears gripped in white-knuckled hands, their shields raised, their farmers and merchants and shepherds playing at war, and they know it. They've trained, yes, they've drilled, but training and reality are two different things, and reality is rolling toward them now in the form of siege towers 20 feet high, battering rams the size of houses, and row after row of Assyrian infantry in polished bronze armor. The first volley of arrows comes without warning, a dark cloud against the pale morning sky, arcing up and then falling, falling, falling. The soldiers on the wall raise their shields, and the arrows strike with a sound like hail on stone. Most hit shields, some find flesh. A young man to Hezekiah's left cries out and falls, an arrow through his shoulder. Another staggers back, clutching his leg. The siege towers roll closer. Each one is a fortress on wheels, packed with soldiers, moving inexorably toward the wall. Archers on the towers fire down at the defenders, forcing them to duck, to crouch behind the battlements, to make themselves as small as possible. And then the battering ram reaches the gate. The first impact shakes the entire wall. Hezekiah feels it in his feet, in his bones, a deep reverberating boom that sounds like the heartbeat of something monstrous. The second impact is louder. The third splits the silence with a crack of wood. The gates are thick, reinforced with iron, built to withstand assault. But they were never meant to withstand this. Inside the city, people hear the sound and freeze. Mothers pull their children close. Old men whisper prayers. Merchants who stayed Hadu, who chose to believe Hezekiah's promise, now wonder if they made the right choice. The sound of the ram is relentless. Boom, 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 a countdown to the end. On the wall, the defenders fight back. They pour boiling oil over the edge, and Assyrian soldiers scream as it splashes across their skin. They drop stones, crushing men beneath the siege towers. They fire arrows into the masses below. But for every Assyrian who falls, 10 more take his place. The army is a hydra, and Judah is running out of oil, out of stones, out of arrows. Hezekiah moves along the wall, shouting encouragement, pulling wounded men back from the edge, gripping shoulders and looking soldiers in the eye and telling them to hold, just hold. But even as he does, he can see it in their faces, the knowledge that this is a losing battle, that courage and faith can't stop bronze and iron, that they're outnumbered 10-1, and the math doesn't lie. A captain, Azariah, the one who laughed bitterly in the courtyard a week ago, grabs Hezekiah's arm. His face is streaked with soot and blood. "My lord, the gate won't hold. Another hour, maybe 2, and they'll be through." Hezekiah looks at him, then at the gate below, where the ram strikes again and again. "Then we make that hour count." Azariah stares at him. "For what? So we can die with our swords in our hands instead of on our knees?" "My lord, this is madness." "It's faith," Hezekiah interrupts. "And if you can't hold on to that, then hold on to your sword. But hold." Azariah releases his arm and turns back to the battle, his jaw tight, his eyes bleak. He doesn't believe, but he obeys, and maybe, in this moment, that's all that matters. The assault continues through the morning, into the afternoon. The sun climbs higher, merciless and hot, and the air fills with smoke and dust and the smell of burning oil and blood. The defenders are exhausted, dehydrated, their arms aching from holding shields, from swinging swords, from hauling stones to the edge and dropping them on the enemy below. And then, as the sun begins its slow descent toward evening, the Assyrians pull back. Not far, just out of arrow range. They don't retreat. They simply stop, regroup, rest. It's a calculated move, a message. We can afford to wait. We can do this all day, all week, all month. Can you? The defenders collapse where they stand. Some drink from water skins with shaking hands. Others tend to the wounded, wrapping makeshift bandages around gashes and punctures. The wall is littered with bodies, too many bodies, and the day isn't even over yet. Hezekiah descends from the wall as the light fades. His legs feel like lead, his shoulders ache, and there's a cut on his forearm he doesn't remember getting. He walks through the streets, and the city feels like a tomb. Every door is shut, every window dark. People hide inside their homes, afraid to look, afraid to hope, afraid to see what's coming next. He passes a group of children huddled in a doorway. They stare at him with wide, hollow eyes. One of them, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, asks in a small voice, "Is it over?" Hezekiah stops, looks down at her, wants to say yes, wants to lie, wants to give her something to hold on to. But he can't, so he just kneels, puts a hand on her head gently and says, "Not yet." She nods, as if this makes sense, and curls back against her mother. Hezekiah rises and keeps walking, the weight of that small, trusting face pressing down on him like a physical thing. He reaches the temple as darkness falls. Inside, it's cool and quiet, the lamplight flickering softly. He walks to the altar, but this time he doesn't kneel. He just stands there, staring at the stone, at the place where he spread the Rabshakeh's letter days ago. "Where are you?" he whispers, not angry, not accusing, just asking, needing to know. The silence is complete. No voice, no sign. Just the empty air and the distant sound of the Assyrian camp preparing for another assault at dawn. Hezekiah sinks onto the floor, his back against the altar, his head in his hands. This is the dark night of the soul, the moment when everything he's believed, everything he's staked his life on, feels like a story he told himself to avoid facing the truth that he's alone, that the promise was a delusion, that God, if he exists at all, is far away and uninterested in the fate of one small city at the edge of the world. He sits there in the darkness, and for the first time since this began, he weeps. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet, exhausted tears that slide down his face and drip onto the stone floor. The tears of a man who has nothing left. Hours pass. Midnight comes and goes. The temple is silent, except for his breathing, slow and ragged. Outside, the city sleeps fitfully, waiting for dawn, waiting for the final push, waiting for the end. And then, footsteps. Hezekiah looks up, his vision blurred. A figure stands in the doorway, silhouetted against the faint light from the corridor. For a moment, he thinks it's a guard, but then the figure steps forward and he sees the face. Isaiah. The prophet is breathing hard, as if he's been running. His eyes are wide, bright, almost wild. In his hand, he holds a scroll, the parchment fresh, the ink still wet. He crosses the temple floor quickly and kneels beside Hezekiah, thrusting the scroll toward him. "Read this," Isaiah says, his voice urgent, shaking. Hezekiah takes the scroll with trembling hands, unrolls it, the lamplight catches the words, and he reads them once, then again, his lips moving silently. "Udezi, therefore thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city or shoot an arrow there. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return. For I will defend this city to save it, for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David." Hezekiah stares at the words, then he looks up at Isaiah. "This very night?" Isaiah nods, his face intense. "This very night." Hezekiah looks at the scroll again. "This very night." It's already past midnight. The final assault is supposed to come at dawn, hours away. What can happen in just a few hours? He looks at Isaiah, and in the prophet's eyes, he sees something he hasn't seen in days. Certainty, not hope, not faith, certainty. Then God has 6 hours. Hezekiah says quietly. Isaiah doesn't smile, but there's something in his expression, something fierce and expectant. 6 hours, he agrees. More than enough. He rises and leaves as quickly as he came, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Hezekiah sits alone again, the scroll still in his hands. He reads the words a third time, a fourth. "I will defend this city, this very night." Outside, the first hint of pre-dawn grey touches the eastern sky. The Assyrian camp stirs. Soldiers begin to wake, to prepare, to sharpen their weapons one last time. The siege engines are readied. The battering ram is positioned. Orders are given in low, efficient voices. Everything is ready. The final assault will begin at first light, and Jerusalem, exhausted and outnumbered, will fall. Everyone knows it. The Assyrians know it. The defenders know it. Even Hezekiah, holding a scroll with a promise written in fresh ink, knows it. Unless God meant what he said. Unless this very night, something impossible is about to happen. Hezekiah stands slowly, the scroll still clutched in his hand. He walks to the temple doors and pushes them open. The cool pre-dawn air hits his face and he breathes it in. Deep, steady breaths. He looks toward the eastern sky, where the first pale light is beginning to break. 6 hours until dawn. 6 hours for God to prove himself. 6 hours to find out if faith was foolishness or if foolishness was the doorway to the miraculous all along. The hour before dawn, The sky is no longer black but not yet grey, that in-between time when the world holds its breath, suspended between night and day, between what was and what will be. It's the hour when darkness makes its last stand before surrendering to light, when shadows are deepest and the cold settles into your bones. On the wall, a soldier stands at his post, his hand gripping his spear so tightly the wood has left impressions in his palm. His name is Micah. He's 23 years old. He has a wife named Deborah and a daughter named Hannah who is 2. He hasn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes burn with exhaustion, his muscles ache from yesterday's battle, and his throat is raw from shouting orders and breathing smoke. He stares out into the darkness, watching the Assyrian camp spread across the valley like a disease. The fires are burning lower now, reduced to glowing embers, but there's movement everywhere, shadows shifting between tents, voices calling orders in that harsh Assyrian tongue, the sound of metal on metal as soldiers check their armor one last time. He can see the siege towers silhouetted against the dying fires, massive and threatening like the towers of some underworld fortress. He can see the battering ram positioned directly in front of the gate below, its bronze-capped head gleaming faintly in the firelight, and he can see the thousands upon thousands of soldiers forming into ranks, preparing for the final push that will break Jerusalem like a clay pot under a hammer. His hands shake. He grips the spear tighter, trying to stop the trembling, but it doesn't help. Nothing helps. He's going to die today. He knows it. They all know it. The only question is how long they can hold before the end comes. Will it be an hour, 2? Will he die from an arrow he never sees coming? Or will he survive long enough to face Assyrian soldiers hand to hand, to feel a blade slide between his ribs, to fall on these stones and bleed out while the city burns around him? He thinks of Deborah, of Hannah's laugh, that bright, innocent sound that seemed to belong to a different world entirely, a world where fathers came home at night, a world where little girls grew up. Below, in the temple, Hezekiah kneels before the altar. He's been there since Isaiah left, motionless, his eyes closed, his hands open on his thighs. He's not praying with words anymore. He's past words. Words are for when you have something to say, when you can form thoughts into coherent requests, but he's beyond that now. He's just waiting for dawn, waiting for God. Waiting for the moment when faith is either vindicated or destroyed, when the promise becomes reality or reveals itself as the desperate delusion of a king who gambled everything and lost. The scroll lies on the altar before him, the words still visible in the lamplight. This very night I will defend this city. The promise feels impossibly fragile, like something that could disappear if he breathes too hard, if he opens his eyes, if he allows even a flicker of doubt to enter his mind. His body aches, his knees throb from hours on the stone floor. His back is stiff, but he doesn't move, doesn't shift position, doesn't allow himself even that small comfort. Because this is all he has left, this posture of surrender, this physical declaration that he has done everything he can and now must wait for God to do what only God can do. Outside, the first birds begin to sing. It's the sound of morning coming, inevitable and indifferent to human terror, the sound of creation continuing its rhythm regardless of empires and wars and the small tragedies of men. The sky lightens by degrees, from black to charcoal to ash to the faintest hint of blue, and in the valley below, the Assyrian army completes its final preparations. The Rabshakeh, the field commander who delivered the mocking speech days ago, who stood before Jerusalem's gates and proclaimed the impotence of Israel's God, mounts his horse. He's dressed for battle now, full armor polished to a mirror shine, sword at his hip, a helmet adorned with the symbols of Assyrian supremacy. Confidence radiates from every gesture, every movement. This is a man who has done this 100 times before. who has stood before 100 cities and watched them crumble. He rides slowly along the front lines, inspecting the troops, and everywhere he passes, soldiers straighten, their discipline perfect, their readiness absolute. These are professionals, veterans, men who have conquered nations, who have turned kingdoms into footnotes in Assyrian record books. They don't doubt, they don't fear, they simply execute, and today they will execute Jerusalem. The Rabshakeh stops at the battering ram, dismounts, runs his hand along the massive wooden beam. The wood is scarred from previous sieges, marked with the impressions of gates that tried to resist and failed. He smiles, a cold, satisfied expression. Today, Jerusalem falls. Today, the God of the Hebrews is proven powerless, just another tribal deity crushed under Assyrian supremacy. Today, Sennacherib adds one more name to his endless list of conquests, and the world is reminded once again that there is only one power that matters: Assyria. On the wall, Micah sees the Rabshakeh and feels his stomach tighten into a knot. He glances to his left, where an older soldier stands, a man named Joram, who fought in the last war, who has scars across his arms and face, who has seen things that left marks deeper than the ones visible on his skin. Joram's eyes are fixed on the valley, his expression unreadable, carved from stone. "How long do you think we have?" Micah asks quietly, his voice barely audible over the wind. Joram doesn't look at him, doesn't move, just keeps staring at the Assyrian camp. An hour, maybe less. Micah swallows hard. His throat is dry. His mouth tastes like copper. Do you think the king was right? That God will? I think, Joram interrupts, his voice flat and emotionless, the voice of a man who has stopped hoping because hope hurts too much, that we're about to find out. In the Assyrian camp, a horn sounds, long, deep, resonant. It's the signal. The final assault is about to begin. The sound carries across the valley, echoing off the walls of Jerusalem, announcing the end. Soldiers move into formation with practiced precision, shields locked in overlapping walls, spears extending like the quills of some massive beast. The siege towers begin to roll forward, their wheels groaning under the weight, ropes creaking, the entire structure swaying slightly as it moves across the uneven ground. The battering ram crew takes their positions, dozens of men gripping the ropes, their muscles tensing, preparing for the first strike that will begin the systematic destruction of Jerusalem's gates. The sky continues to lighten. Dawn is coming. The moment is here, and then, in the temple, something changes. Hezekiah feels it before he hears it. A shift in the air, a pressure like the moment before lightning strikes, when the hair on your arm stands up and the world goes silent and you know something is about to happen. His eyes snap open. The lamplight flickers, though there's no wind, no draft, no movement in the still air of the temple. The scroll on the altar seems to glow for a moment. Not literally, but the ink catches the light in a way that makes the words appear three-dimensional, alive, as if they're breathing. He stands slowly, his joints protesting, his heart beginning to pound. Something is happening. He doesn't know what, he can't name it. He has no words for this sensation, but something is happening. The air feels charged, electric, as if reality itself is bending, preparing to accommodate something that doesn't fit within its normal rules. Outside, on the wall, Micah gasps. The sound is involuntary, shocked from his lungs. Joram's head snaps up, his eyes widening. Both of them are staring at the valley, their faces suddenly pale, their mouths open. The Assyrian army has stopped moving. Not slowly, not gradually, not with the natural pause of an army adjusting formation or waiting for final orders. All at once, as if a single command had frozen every soldier mid-step, mid-breath, mid-thought. The siege towers halt, their wheels locked in place. The battering ram crew stands motionless, ropes slack in their hands. Even the horses have stopped, their heads lowered, their bodies still as statues. The silence is absolute, unnatural. The kind of silence that feels like pressure against your eardrums. Micah blinks, trying to understand what he's seeing. His mind struggles to process the impossible image. What? What are they doing? Joram doesn't answer. Can't answer. He's gripping the wall so tightly his knuckles are white, his face frozen in an expression caught between disbelief and something that might be the beginning of hope. In the valley, the Rabshakeh sits on his horse, staring at his troops. He shouts an order. Micah can hear his voice carrying across the distance, harsh and commanding, but no one moves, no one responds, no one even turns to look at him. The soldiers just stand there, perfectly still, as if they've all become statues in the same instant, as if some invisible force has reached into their bodies and simply stopped them. The Rabshakeh dismounts quickly, his movements sharp with confusion and the first edge of fear. He walks to the nearest soldier, grabs him by the shoulder, and shakes him. The soldier doesn't react, doesn't turn, doesn't even seem to notice. His eyes are open but unfocused, staring at nothing. The Rabshakeh shouts in his face, his voice rising with panic, and the soldier simply stands there. And then, slowly, the soldier's knees buckle. He sinks to the ground, not collapsing violently but settling gently, as if he's decided to lie down and rest after a long day's march. His eyes close, his chest rises and falls once, twice, and then stops, just stops. No convulsion, no struggle, just cessation. The Rabshakeh stumbles back, his face pale, his hand going to his sword instinctively, though there's nothing to fight, no enemy to strike. And all around him, across the entire camp, it's happening. Hundreds of soldiers, thousands, all sinking to their knees, lying down, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they're being guided by invisible hands. No screaming, no panic, no struggle, no chaos. Just sleep, eternal sleep. The angel of the Lord is passing through, and where he passes, breath ceases, hearts stop. The soldiers of Assyria, who thought themselves invincible, who marched across nations and crushed cities, are being laid down like children put to bed by a patient parent, one by one, row by row, tent by tent. The greatest army the world has ever seen is being unmade by something they can't see, can't fight, can't comprehend. On the wall, Micah's spear falls from his hands, clattering on the stone. The sound seems impossibly loud in the silence. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. His mind can't form words, can't form thoughts. He's seeing something that shouldn't be possible, something that violates every rule of how the world works. Joram is whispering something, a prayer maybe, or just incoherent sounds, words that have lost their meaning in the face of the impossible. All along the wall, defenders are staring, frozen in disbelief. Some are weeping, others are laughing. High, hysterical sounds that border on madness. One man falls to his knees, his hands pressed to his face. In the temple, Hezekiah runs. He doesn't walk. He doesn't move with royal dignity. He runs through the corridors, through the palace, his robes flying behind him, his heart hammering in his chest so hard it feels like it might burst. He bursts through the doors and sprints toward the wall, taking the steps two at a time. His breath coming in gasps, his legs burning. He reaches the top and stops, his hands gripping the stone parapet so hard his fingers ache. And he sees it, the Assyrian camp, silent, still, thousands of tents in perfect rows, fires still burning, sending up thin columns of smoke into the morning air, banners still hanging, the crimson fist of Assyria visible on dozens of flags. Siege engines perfectly positioned, weapons stacked and ready, everything in order, everything prepared. But no movement, no sound, nothing. It's like looking at a painting a frozen moment, a battle that was interrupted mid-breath and will never continue. Hezekiah's legs give out. He sinks to his knees, his hands still gripping the stone, and he stares at the impossible sight before him. His breath comes in short, sharp gasps. Tears stream down his face, but he doesn't notice. He can't look away, can't process what he's seeing. Isaiah appears beside him, moving slowly, his face solemn, his eyes bright with something that looks like vindication. He places a hand on Hezekiah's shoulder and looks out at the valley. "Send a scout," Isaiah says quietly. Hezekiah can't speak, can't move, can barely breathe. He just nods, and someone, Azariah maybe, or Joram, he doesn't even know who, runs to obey. The scout is a young man named Benaiah. He's barely 20, eager and brave in the way only the young can be. He volunteers because no one else will, because everyone else is too terrified to approach the camp, too afraid that whatever killed 185,000 soldiers might still be there waiting. He climbs down from the wall, his movements careful, and crosses the empty space before the gate. Every eye on the wall watches him, follows his small figure as he walks toward the camp, as he disappears into the maze of tents. 10 minutes pass. 15, 20, the silence is absolute, suffocating. No one speaks, no one moves. They just watch the place where Benaiah disappeared, waiting, hoping, fearing. And then Benaiah reappears, walking slowly out of the camp, his face the color of old parchment, his eyes wide and distant. He doesn't run. He walks like a man in a dream, like someone who has seen something his mind can't fully accept. Back to the gate, back up the wall. His footsteps echo in the silence. He stands before Hezekiah and falls to his knees. His whole body is trembling. When he speaks, his voice is barely a whisper, but in the silence, everyone hears every word. "My Lord, they're dead. All of them, 185,000 men, dead in their tents. No wounds, no blood, no marks of any kind. They just died, as if something passed through and took their breath. Some are lying in their beds. Some are sitting at tables with food still in their hands. Some are standing, just standing there, dead on their feet. I touched one and he fell over like a piece of wood." He stops, swallows hard, his face contorting with the effort of holding back tears or vomit or both. It's like they all just stopped, all at once, in the same moment, as if God reached down and he can't finish, doesn't need to. The words hang in the air like smoke, like incense, like the breath of something holy and terrible. The wall erupts, not with screams, but with sounds that have no name, part sob, part laugh, part prayer. Men who haven't wept in years are crying openly. Others are embracing, holding each other up because their legs won't support them anymore. Some fall to their knees in prayer, others just stand there, staring at the valley, trying to comprehend what has happened. And then, from somewhere on the wall, a single voice begins to sing. It's one of the old Psalms. "The Lord is my strength and my shield." The words cracked and uncertain at first, wavering with emotion, but growing stronger. Other voices join in, then more, then dozens, until the entire wall is singing, the sound rising into the morning air, a chorus of disbelief and wonder and overwhelming, impossible relief. Hezekiah closes his eyes. Tears stream down his face, and this time he doesn't try to hide them, doesn't try to maintain dignity or composure. He just kneels there on the stone, his hands open, his heart breaking and mending at the same time, shattering and being rebuilt in the same impossible moment. Isaiah kneels beside him, places a hand on his shoulder. When Hezekiah opens his eyes, the prophet is looking at him with something like pride, something like joy, something like the satisfaction of a man who spoke truth when everyone called it madness and has now been proven right. "The angel of the Lord," Isaiah says quietly, "he passed through in the night, and when morning came, behold, They were all dead. Hezekiah looks back at the valley, at the silent camp, at the impossible evidence of divine intervention. And in his chest, where terror and doubt had lived for days, where fear had made its home and seemed permanent, something else blooms. Not just relief, not just gratitude, but understanding. The kind of understanding that comes only when you've been brought to the absolute edge of everything you can endure, when you've exhausted every resource and strategy and strength, when you've been stripped down to nothing but naked faith and discovered that the edge isn't the end. It's where God begins. The sun breaks over the horizon, flooding the valley with golden light, and in that light, the Assyrian camp looks almost peaceful, beautiful even, as if 185,000 soldiers simply decided to rest, and in resting found something deeper than sleep, something final, something ordained, something that proved once and for all that the God of Israel does not need armies or strategies or human strength. He simply needs to breathe, and empires fall. Dawn fully breaks over Jerusalem, and with it comes a silence more profound than any that has preceded it, the kind of silence that follows miracles, the kind that settles over battlefields when the battle never happens, the kind that makes you afraid to speak because words seem inadequate, almost sacrilegious in the face of what has occurred. Hezekiah stands slowly, his joints protesting, and walks to the edge of the wall. Below him, the city is beginning to stir. Doors open cautiously, people emerge, blinking in the sunlight, their faces confused, uncertain. They heard the singing from the walls, but they don't yet know why. They slept through the night waiting for the final assault, and now the sun is up, and the city still stands, and no one is screaming, and no one is dying. A woman steps into the street, holding her child. She looks up at the wall, sees the soldiers standing there, not fighting, not defending, just standing, and her face crumples with confusion. "What happened?" she calls up. "Why aren't they attacking?" A soldier leans over the wall, and when he speaks, his voice is thick with emotion. "They're dead, all of them. God killed them in the night." The woman stares, doesn't move, doesn't speak, her mind trying to process words that make no sense. And then, slowly, she sinks to her knees in the street, still holding her child, and begins to weep. Others hear. The word spreads like fire through dry grass. People pour into the streets now, calling to each other, asking questions, seeking confirmation. Is it true? All of them, dead. How? When? And the answer comes back again and again. God did it. God saved us. The city erupts in sound, not the sound of battle, but of release, of terror transformed into joy, of death sentence commuted to life. People embrace strangers. Children run through the streets laughing because their parents are laughing, because the oppressive fear that has hung over the city for days has suddenly, impossibly lifted. Old men dance in doorways. Women throw open windows and shout prayers into the morning air. On the wall, Hezekiah turns to Isaiah. The prophet is watching the city celebrate, a slight smile on his face. "I need to see it," Hezekiah says quietly. "I need to see it with my own eyes." Isaiah nods. "Then let's go." They descend from the wall together, moving through the celebrating crowds. Hezekiah gathers a small group: Eliakim, Joah, Azariah, Benaiah the scout, and a handful of soldiers. They approach the gate, and the guards pull it open slowly, the hinges groaning, the sound echoing in the strange stillness beyond. Hezekiah steps through, and his feet touch ground outside Jerusalem's walls for the first time in days. The air smells different here, smoke and metal and something else, something he can't quite name. The smell of divine judgment, perhaps. The smell of the impossible made real. They walk toward the Assyrian camp slowly, a small group of men approaching an army that outnumbered them 20-1. But the army is no longer a threat. The army is no longer an army at all. They reach the first row of tents, and Hezekiah pushes aside the flap of the nearest one. Inside, 3 soldiers lie on their bedrolls, their eyes closed, their faces peaceful. They look like they're sleeping, like they might wake at any moment and reach for their weapons. But they won't. They'll never wake again. Hezekiah moves to the next tent, the same, and the next, and the next. Soldiers lying down, sitting up, standing frozen mid-motion, all of them dead. No wounds, no blood, no signs of struggle or violence, just cessation, as if life had been a flame and someone had simply blown it out. They walk deeper into the camp, past siege engines that will never be used, past weapons that will never be raised, past fires that have burned down to ash. The scale of it is overwhelming, row after row of tents, hundreds, thousands, and in every tent, death, silent, complete, absolute. Eliakim stops at a command tent, larger than the others, richly decorated. He looks inside and turns away quickly, his face pale. "The Rabshakeh," he says quietly. "He's in there." Hezekiah steps forward and looks. The field commander who mocked God from Jerusalem's gates lies on the ground, his eyes open, staring at nothing. His mouth is slightly open, as if he was about to speak when death took him. His hand still grips the hilt of his sword, a sword he never got to draw. Hezekiah stares down at him for a long moment. This man who proclaimed the impotence of Israel's God, this man who compared the Lord to the dead idols of fallen nations, this man who stood at the gates and asked, "Who among all the gods has delivered their land from my hand?" Now he has his answer. Isaiah steps up beside Hezekiah and looks down at the Rabshakeh. "Whom did you mock?" he says softly, "not to the dead man, but to the air, to the morning, to the evidence of divine power spread across the valley. Against whom did you raise your voice? You mocked the Holy One of Israel, and he heard every word." They continue through the camp, and with each step, the magnitude of what has happened settles more deeply into their bones. This isn't just a military victory. This isn't just the defeat of an army. This is a reordering of reality. This is God stepping into history and rewriting the rules. This is the moment when faith stops being a concept and becomes a fact you can walk through, touch, stand in the middle of. Benaiah, the young scout, stops beside a soldier who died standing up, his spear still in his hand. "I've never seen anything like this," he whispers. "I've seen men die in battle. I've seen disease. I've seen starvation. But this, what kind of power does this?" Hezekiah answers quietly, "The kind that spoke the universe into existence, the kind that parted the Red Sea, the kind that doesn't need our strength or our strategies or our understanding, the kind that is." They walk to the center of the camp where Sennacherib's personal standard stands, a massive banner, 20 feet high, the crimson fist of Assyria emblazoned on black fabric. It hangs limp in the still air, no longer a symbol of power, but a memorial to hubris. Azariah reaches up and tears it down. The fabric falls to the ground, and no one moves to stop him. No Assyrian soldiers rush to defend their king's honor, because there are no Assyrian soldiers, not anymore. There's only silence and death and the inescapable reality of divine judgment. They turn and walk back toward Jerusalem, leaving the camp behind. As they approach the gate, they see the entire city gathered, thousands of people lining the walls, filling the streets, watching them return. And when they see their king walking back alive, walking through the camp of their enemies unharmed, a roar goes up, not organized, not orderly, just a massive, spontaneous explosion of sound, cheering and weeping and shouting praise. Hezekiah walks through the gate, and the crowd presses close, reaching out to touch him, to touch anyone who went into the camp and came back. Children hold up their hands. Women call out blessings. Old men bow their heads in respect and gratitude. Hezekiah makes his way to the temple, the crowd following, filling the courtyard, spilling into the streets beyond. He climbs the steps and turns to face them, and the crowd falls silent, waiting to hear what their king will say. What words could possibly capture this moment? Hezekiah looks out at them, these people who trusted him, who believed when belief made no sense, who held on when letting go would have been easier. His voice, when he speaks, is steady but thick with emotion. "I want to tell you what I saw," he begins. "I want to tell you about the Assyrian camp, about 185,000 soldiers who came to destroy us, about the most powerful army on earth, silenced in a single night." He pauses, choosing his words carefully. "They didn't fall to our swords. They didn't fall to our strategy. They didn't fall because we were strong or clever or brave. They fell because we had something they didn't. We had a promise. And the one who made that promise is faithful." His voice grows stronger. "The Rabshakeh stood at our gates and asked, 'Who among all the gods has delivered their people from Assyria?' Now he has his answer. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who sees, the God who hears, the God who defends his people, not because we deserve it, but because he is faithful to his name." The crowd is silent, hanging on every word. Hezekiah continues, "We didn't win this battle. We surrendered. We came to the end of everything we could do, and we laid it before God and said, 'This is too big for us, but not for you.' And he met us there, at the edge, in the darkness, in the hour when hope seemed like foolishness." He looks across the crowd, making eye contact with individuals, the woman who spat at his feet, the young soldier Micah, the old warrior Joram, the little girl Hannah who asked if it was over. So here's what this means for us. It means that when the enemy comes, and enemies will always come, we don't measure victory by the size of our army. We measure it by the faithfulness of our God. It means that when the voice of fear is louder than the voice of heaven, we hold on, we stand, we trust. Because the same God who silenced 185,000 enemies in one night can silence the chaos in your heart. He pauses, and when he speaks again, his voice drops to something quieter, more intimate. "I won't lie to you. I doubted. In the darkness, alone in the temple, I wondered if I'd heard wrong, if I'd led you all to destruction because of my pride. But God didn't need my certainty. He just needed my surrender. And maybe that's the lesson here. Maybe faith isn't about being sure. It's about trusting even when you're not." The crowd is weeping now, not with sorrow, but with recognition. Because they all doubted too. They all wondered. They all stood at the edge and looked down into the abyss and questioned whether faith was wisdom or madness. Isaiah steps forward and raises his hands. His voice carries across the courtyard, strong and prophetic. "This is what the Lord says. I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. I will defend this city for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David." He lowers his hands and looks at the crowd. "Not for your sake, for his sake. Because his name is tied to this city, to this people, and he will not allow his name to be mocked." The crowd erupts. People lift their hands, calling out prayers, singing psalms. The sound rises like incense, like an offering, filling the temple courtyard and spilling out into the city and rising up into the morning sky. Hours later, as the celebration continues in the streets, messengers arrive with news. Sennacherib himself was not in the camp. He had returned to Nineveh days earlier, confident of victory, leaving the Rabshakeh to finish the siege. When news reaches him of what happened, when scouts arrive breathless and pale, telling him that his entire army is gone, he locks himself in his palace. For years afterward, he will never speak of Jerusalem. He will commission monuments listing all his conquests, and Jerusalem will be conspicuously absent from the list. The city he couldn't take, the people he couldn't break, the God he couldn't defeat. 20 years later in Nineveh, Sennacherib will be murdered by his own sons while worshipping in the temple of his God, cut down at the altar by the very heirs who were supposed to carry on his legacy. The man who mocked the living God will die at the hands of those he trusted most, in the house of a God who couldn't save him. But that's later. Now in Jerusalem, as the sun climbs higher, Hezekiah walks through the city alone. He passes families embracing, children playing in streets that should have been battlefields, old men sitting in doorways crying tears of relief. He walks until he reaches the wall again and climbs to the spot where he stood this morning. The Assyrian camp is still there, visible in the valley below. Tomorrow they'll have to deal with it, bury the bodies, clear the weapons, salvage what can be salvaged. But for now, it just sits there, a monument to the night God rewrote history. Hezekiah stands at the wall, his hands on the stone, and looks out, and he thinks about all the moments that led here, the letter that mocked God, the prayer that felt like shouting into a void, the promise that arrived in fresh ink at midnight, the impossible wait in the darkness. And he understands now, understands that faith isn't about having the answers. It's about holding on when you don't. It's about laying your impossibilities before God and saying, defend your name. It's about trusting that the silence isn't absence, it's preparation, that the darkness isn't abandonment, it's the canvas on which God is about to paint. The sun is high now, bright and warm. The city is alive with celebration. And Hezekiah whispers a prayer, not loud, not formal, just a quiet word to the God who saved them. Thank you, not just for delivering us, but for proving that when we have nothing left but faith, nothing left but you, that's when you show up. That's when you do the impossible. That's when you remind us that you're God and we're not. And that's exactly how it should be. He stays there for a long time, watching the valley, watching the light play across the silent camp, watching the impossible evidence of grace. And in his heart, where terror once lived, where doubt made its home, there's only one thing now: certainty. Not certainty about the future, not certainty about what tomorrow holds, but certainty about who God is. And that, he realizes, is the only certainty anyone really needs. So here's the question this story leaves with us. The invitation it extends across millennia to every person who hears it. What enemy are you facing that feels too big? What voice is louder than heaven's silence? What impossibility is crushing the breath from your chest and making you wonder if faith is just another word for delusion? Maybe it's a diagnosis that came back wrong. Maybe it's a relationship that's broken beyond what you can fix. Maybe it's a financial disaster, a professional failure, a dream that died, a door that closed, a prayer that went unanswered so long you stopped praying. Maybe it's 185,000 Assyrian soldiers camped outside your gates, and dawn is coming, and you're out of options. Here's what Hezekiah's story says to that. Spread it before God. Don't minimize it. Don't pretend it's smaller than it is. Don't try to be spiritual enough to not feel the terror. Take the letter, whatever your letter is, whatever document of doom has your name on it, and spread it out and say, this is too big for me. I've done everything I can. Now I need you to defend your name. Because that's what this story is really about. It's not about Hezekiah being strong enough or faithful enough or strategic enough. It's about him getting to the end of himself and discovering that the end of himself was the beginning of God. And maybe that's the invitation today. Not to be strong enough, but to be honest enough. Not to have all the answers, but to admit you have none. Not to prove your faith is unshakable, but to hold on even when it's trembling. Because the same God who silenced 185,000 enemies in one night can silence the chaos in your heart, the fear that won't stop whispering, the doubt that won't let you sleep, the voice that says it's over, it's too late, it's too big, there's no way out. He is still the defender, still the keeper of promises, still the God who writes history when humans run out of hope. Still the one who meets us at the edge of everything we can endure and says, "Watch what I can do with nothing." So if this story has touched you, if you felt the weight of it, if you saw yourself in Hezekiah's impossible situation, if you've been standing on your own wall watching your own enemies gather and wondering where God is, then do two things. First, surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of trust. The kind Hezekiah did when he spread the letter on the altar. The kind that says, "I can't, but you can. I'm afraid, but you're faithful. This is beyond me, but nothing is beyond you." And second, subscribe, turn on the bell, and share this story with someone who's fighting a battle they think they can't win. Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't what God does for us. It's what He does through us when we finally stop pretending we can do it alone. The sun rose over Jerusalem that morning on a city that should have been destroyed. It rose on gates that should have been broken. It rose on people who should have been slaves or corpses. But instead, it rose on a miracle. On impossible evidence of a God who defends His people, not because they're strong, but because He is. And He's the same today. Same power, same faithfulness. Same willingness to meet you at the edge of your impossibility and prove that edges aren't endings, they're doorways to the miraculous. Hold on until dawn. Just hold on. Because when God moves, empires fall with a breath. And the breath that can silence armies can also still your soul.